Hey, welcome back. This is the We Are Big YouTube show. My name's Andy Adair, and it's happening. It's finally happening. Dominoes are falling. Colorado's moving. Arizona's moving. Arizona State's moving. Oregon's moving. Washington's moving. Florida State wants out. Miami wants out. Clemson wants out. It's crazy. Let's talk about conference realignment this episode. Let's do it. All right, so things are moving fast with conference realignment. You have Oregon and Washington leaving or making their intentions to leave, just waiting on the Big Ten to make a formal announcement, which should happen later tonight. Arizona State, kind of in the same boat. They've made their intentions known. They're having a meeting with their board of regents. Everything's moving super fast. Colorado's already gone. What does this mean for the Big Ten? It looks like the Big Ten's going to move to 18 teams. Probably by the 2024 season when USC and UCLA come in. What could it mean in the future? I think you got to look at what's happening down in Florida State. Florida State wants out. They're trying to get the money that they need to break that ESPN contract. If Florida State leaves, I think you're looking at Miami, you're looking at North Carolina, Clemson, as other teams that would want to pursue that route as well. What's weird is how quiet the SEC has been. I'm glad the Big Ten has kind of taken the aggressor role with this and getting out in front of it and kind of being the leader in this realm where the SEC has been the leader. Because the SEC got this all started when they brought over Texas and Oklahoma almost out of nowhere. So we're kind of seeing the SEC works more behind the scenes with less kind of getting out there in the open, where the Pac 12, now these teams are really getting out in front of it, making their intentions known and making everything kind of public. Like you look at Florida State, I mean, they're a prime example. They're trying to make it messy. They're letting the ACC know right now, hey, we want out. Letting the SEC and the Big Ten know they're open for business. Florida State wants in. They see the contract money that is in the SEC and the Big Ten and what the ACC is projected to do, and it doesn't make sense to stay. They're essentially staying at like a $20 or $30 million a year behind the bottom team in the Big Ten. And all that money can be used for recruiting and facilities and all the things that make a football program good. So Florida State's going to be the next domino, basically. It's all dependent on what they do. I think if Florida State can find a way out, they're going to bring teams with them, whether that's to the SEC or the Big Ten. We're not really sure. The Big Ten seems more interested at this moment, especially with Miami. I think Miami's one to watch out for the Big Ten. If for whatever reason Florida State decides to go with the SEC, I think you could still see the Big Ten expand into Florida with Miami. And I mean, how great would that be having Miami in the Big Ten? Clemson, I think Clemson's a better fit in the Big Ten than the SEC. Same thing with North Carolina. I just see the fit better in the Big Ten than the SEC. I know this is all driven by money. I mean, people hate when it's driven by money. You're breaking traditions and rivalries and all that stuff. But in the grand scheme of thing, it's going to make college football better. You're going to have more important games. I know Rutgers and Indiana are still in the Big Ten, but you're going to have more of those big marquee games. You're going to have Ohio State potentially going down to Florida State. You're going to have Penn State go to Clemson or Michigan to North Carolina. Or just think of all the matchups there. You got Wisconsin going to USC or Nebraska going to Oregon. It's just crazy when you think of all the potential matchups and how cool is that? I mean, you're essentially getting the Big Ten Conference into parts of the United States that don't normally watch the Big Ten. And I mean, the Pac-12 after dark, was a huge success. I mean, it's still gonna stay the same, especially if this Oregon and Washington proves to be. I mean, you're still going to have USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Nebraska out there. You're still going to get, the late games, which, I mean, it just helps the Big Ten. You have more time slots and more chances for eyeballs. And like I said, in the biggest grand scheme of all of this, it's going to be in a lot better football and a lot more important games. You're not going to have that 1 week in conference that the Big Ten always seems to have, where the biggest game is Ohio State against Purdue. Now, granted, Purdue will pull that upset every once in a while, but you're almost guaranteed with this expansion to 18 or possibly 20 or 24 teams. You are almost guaranteed you're going to have a couple marquee matchups every single week on multiple networks. You're talking the Big Ten's in with the CBS, Fox, and NBC right now, where these other schools, they're pretty much only on ESPN right now. So more eyes means more focus on the Big Ten, more focus on the Big Ten schools. I know eventually, you got the Big Ten needs to win a national title. They need to get it away from the SEC. This is only going to help. The more money that's in it, the more resource it is for the recruiting, for the programs to get the talent in there. The coaches are great in the Big Ten. There's a talent gap between the SEC and the Big Ten. I mean, you look at the recruiting rankings, and you can see that. This is only going to help the Big Ten expanding this way. And I mean, honestly, truly, I think it all ends with two 24 team conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, both with 24 schools. I mean, in a dream world, I mean, if the Big Ten can add to Oregon and Washington, assuming that's a done deal, that puts you at 18. So 19 and 20. I mean, there's word out there about Stanford and Cal, but I don't know if that's the best decision. I would love to see Miami and Florida State. That'd be 19 and 20. Get UNC. That'd be 21. Notre Dame's the big cog in the wheel and their independence. It would be great if the Big Ten could finally wrangle Notre Dame into the Big Ten. It makes sense regionally. It just football sense. It just makes so much sense for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten. And you look at the money that each Big Ten school is getting from the TV contracts, it's almost identical to what Notre Dame's getting currently in their NBC deal. I would love to see Notre Dame in the Big Ten. I mean, you bring back their iconic matchups with Michigan State and Michigan, back when those teams played every year or almost every year, and had a legitimate rivalry. Um, and then if you're looking further down the road, I mean, do you take another stab at the Big 12 teams? Or Utah? I mean, Utah's kind of up in the air right now. Where does Utah go after all this? Does the Big 12 make a play, or does the Big 10 swoop in? Utah would be a pretty decent school to bring in for football purposes, and get you to those 24 teams that I think in the end both conferences are going to be looking for. The football is what's most important in all this, and it's gonna be great. I mean, you're gonna get the matchups, and I just can't wait to see where this ends up. And it's gonna happen sooner rather than later. I mean, look at Colorado pulled the little thread by going from Pac-12 back to the Big 12, and then all of a sudden, Arizona State. Everybody's looking for a lifeboat. There's only so many conferences that are going to be around. Unfortunately, it looks like the Pac 12 is going to be done. And there's not really going to be a home for Stanford, Cal, Washington State, Oregon State. It just doesn't look like they're going to have a home. Maybe they bring in the Mountain West and keep the Pac 12 name. But then they're not going to be considered a power conference anymore at that point. Uh, I mean, right now, as it sits, you still have four major conferences after this season. The Big 12 will still be there, but they're the bottom tier. If the ACC stays together, they're third. Then you have the Big 10 and SEC, who are going to be your top two from here on out. You're going to have your haves and have-nots. You're looking at the teams that are on the outside looking in. I think, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, Duke. These could all be teams that are on the outside looking for a home and could eventually, essentially be dropped down to that group of five conference level, essentially. if they can't find a way to join the Big Ten or the SEC or the Big 12. If the Big 12 continues to grow, you could see maybe the Big 12 getting to 24 and essentially having a three-team or three-conference power structure there, but they're still going to be a step below the Big 10 and the SEC. No matter who they bring in at this point, the Big 12 is always going to be below the Big 10 and the SEC. There's just no debating that. But, you know, here we are, 2023. 2024 is going to be crazy. I'm going to imagine Oregon and Washington are coming in next season. Doesn't make any sense with Colorado leaving next season. So the Big Ten's going to onboard at least 4 teams, it looks like right now. And going to have to redo that entire schedule. They spent a ton of time doing. But it's going to be special. I can't wait. Being a Penn State fan, you know, I'm going to try to make it happen. I'm going to try to go out west and see, Penn State take on Oregon or USC. I mean, it's just going to be something that this generation of football fan hasn't really witnessed, uh, going coast to coast essentially. And if you look, if the Big Ten does end up getting into Florida, I mean, it just opens up so many opportunities. It'll only help the Big Ten in recruiting. I mean, you've already seen it how Ohio State's really been able to get in California more since USC and UCLA announced they're going to the Big Ten. The same thing's going to happen in Florida. These recruits see, hey, it doesn't matter if I go, I don't have to go to the ACC or SEC to play in Florida. Now I can go to the Big Ten and have a game or a couple games a year in Florida. Same thing with California. It opens the country up for the Big Ten in recruiting. So essentially, there is no kind of dry spot for the Big Ten. The Big Ten can go anywhere and recruit because they are everywhere. They're on the West Coast. They're down south. They're the Midwest. The only real big spot that they're missing would be down south in Texas and Georgia. But that was always going to be SEC territory, anyways. This move could not be bigger for the Big Ten with all the teams coming in. And I mean, we're going to see how it works out. I think it's great, and we'll see how it all turns out when it's all said and done. I think the next couple of weeks, a lot's going to come out, especially with the Florida teams and the ACC teams. And we're just going to have to see what unfolds. It's going to be a crazy time. Hopefully, this is all done before the season starts, so then we can actually focus on the actual football on the field and root for our favorite teams. And once the season's over, then we can take a step back and look and see, wow, this is crazy, this is great, this is I think it'll revitalize the Big Ten and fans, and you get to play teams you've never played before. So I think this is a great move by the Big Ten, and let's see who else they can add. Now let's jump into a little spring football talk. A couple position battles I wanted to look at. One of which being Ohio State, the quarterback position, with Kyle McCord and Devin Brown. It was assumed coming out of spring ball and through the summer that this was Kyle McCord's job to lose. And it looks like Devin Brown might be making an impression on the staff and might actually make this a position battle heading into the first game against Indiana. Very interesting for Ohio State, as both guys are highly recruited. So I don't think Ohio State's going to lose anything by going one or the other. I think it's truly going to be a quarterback competition where the best player will play. Going to be really exciting to see who they end up going with, or maybe even because they do have let's face it, a little cupcake game against Indiana to start the season, that maybe both of them play that first game and see who does better. The other one I was looking at was Michigan State's quarterback battle, with Peyton Thorne transferring out to Auburn. That leaves Noah Kim and Caden Hauser are battling it out for Michigan State there for the quarterback position. It's going to be very interesting to see with Michigan State coming off a disappointing season. And losing the top receiver to the transfer portal as well. Michigan State really needs a rebound this year, and the quarterback play will be a big reason for that. So whether it's Noah Kim or Caden Hauser, Michigan State's really going to need some good production out of that quarterback position to make up for some other faults that are on the team, and kind of keep that defense off the field and rebound, like I said, rebound from last season's kind of disappointment. Those were the two battles I was really interested in spring ball so far. I know we're only a couple, or fall ball, I should say. I know we're only a couple days into fall camp, and those are just two of the battles that have really intrigued me so far. And with that said, I think that'll conclude this episode for We Are Big. And have a good day.